Hello! So today this video will be a little special, you could say. Let's just say I'm about to get very personal with you all, and this is going to be a pretty difficult video for me to record. So first I just want to warn you that I'm going to talk about pretty intense topics like alcohol and just abuse in general. So if you are very sensitive to these topics, you might not really want to stay here, for your own safety or anything. If you're not in the mood, if you're feeling sensitive, I don't know, this could be a trigger. So just, feel free to just skip this video or come back here later. Anything you want, really, it's fine. So basically, I grew up in an abusive household. So to make it simple, my mother and my father just, broke up when I was very young, something like 2 years old. So I lived with my mom until I was 15 years old. And then I moved to my father, who was really, really much better, My mom was really kind of, let's say she had me very young. When she got pregnant, she was only 18, so she wasn't really mature. She had an abusive mother herself, so she didn't really have any good example of what a good parent is like, like a lot of abusive parents actually. However, this doesn't excuse anything. If you grow up with a parent who's been abused too as a child and you feel very empathetic towards them, it is fine, okay? It is very human. However, it does not excuse abusing your own children. It's not an excuse. It is pretty tragic, but it is not an excuse, so please do not excuse your own parents if you feel like they are being abusive, because it's a pattern that they have themselves been through. So, okay, to go back to the main topic, my mom was really pretty abusive. She wasn't really physically abusive, because of course she wasn't, but she was extremely psychologically, verbally abusive, emotionally, and also very neglecting on a lot of levels. So since this video is unscripted, it is going to be maybe a little messy in the narration, but it isn't really something I feel like I want to script. It is more about my feelings, and so this is going to be pretty impulsive. But first I'm going to start with the beginning, of course. So basically, she kept me, even though she was really, really young. She didn't abort, and she moved to a small apartment with my father. It was really complicated for him too, since he had to just drop all his studies to find a work and bring money to the table if they wanted to survive, especially with a kid. I am very grateful that he didn't just run away, because I don't know if I would still be alive at this point if he hadn't been here. Or my grandparents, by the way, they were also very supportive, even if they didn't always catch how bad the situation was. So already as a child, I don't have memories from this, but my mom used to really manipulate my dad a lot when he broke up, like for him to send her money because she didn't have a job or anything. She would manipulate him and coerce him and really just do bad stuff and convince him to send money, but by saying that if he didn't, she would boil me alive, which is like crazy. Don't do that. That's crazy. So yeah, she was already pretty bad back then, but you could say that she was a young mother. She was like 18, 19, 20. So yeah, you could say she would mature and realize how bad this was, but no, she never did. She just never did, straight up. But time passed, and now, let's say I'm around 8, 7, I don't exactly know the age. This is a little messy, a little blurry, but basically she was already at this time, even if I didn't really realize, because, well, duh, I was a child, she was really bad at being a mother. Like, she would not really give me any love, she wouldn't hug me, she wouldn't do any of these little affectionate things that children really need for their development. But I was kind of used to it. I would only go to my dad's house and my grandparents a weekend out of 2, so I didn't really see them a lot, only 4 to 6 days a month. And every time I went there, I just never wanted to go back to my mother's place. I just begged and cried to stay here, but of course they had to send me back, sadly. Something that happened around when I was 9 is that I was very bullied all my life, but especially in elementary school when I was 9 or 8, I don't know anymore. A guy pushed me, and my my head really hit the concrete pretty hard, like pretty damn hard, that I had to go to the hospital. And it was really let's say I had a little brain damage. I have a little brain damage now. Maybe that's why I'm stupid, but and after this, well, there were other reasons, but my mom decided to move, to change city and school and everything. And this was a pretty huge moment for me, because I mostly remember things from where we moved from this city. And we went for a smaller, like, countryside city, and it was much less populated. It was, yeah, it was already a little better for me. At this time we had like 2 cats. We had a cat called Roxas and another that was called Shinku. So Roxas was my mother's cat and Shinku was mine, and I basically always had to clean the mess. I had to pretty much clean everything. So you see, when cats are very, well, badly educated, because you know, badly raised, you just didn't pay enough attention to them, didn't raise them well, anything, they tend to not really be happy because you didn't give them attention, and do bad stuff because they weren't taught that it was bad. And my mom didn't only suck at educating me, but also at educating the cats, because my cat, that she considered was my job to raise, even though I was like 8, always pissed on the floor and pooped on the floor, which she always considered me responsible for, even though, well, it wasn't really my job to raise a living being as a little child who didn't get any good, well, anything from my mom. So yeah, but okay, I did it. It was really gross, it was disgusting, but I did it because, well, it was my cat. So I considered it my responsibility, and if I didn't anyway, my mom would call me names and scream at me from the bottom of her lungs, and I didn't like it as a child. Of course I didn't, I mean, of course, but yeah. So I did that. I cried because it really smelled bad. I was also the one in charge of the cats all the time, even though she said it was her cats and all. I was the one who was cleaning their rooms when I was like very young. I was the one who had to really do pretty much everything for the cats, except all the things like vets that I couldn't do, but clean, give them water, give them food, keep them entertained, because she basically didn't care about them, like it was crazy, and just pretty much everything. But it was fine to me until it wasn't. So around 2018, she she started dating a guy. And the guy is not the problem. The guy was adorable. Really, he was adorable. He was very nice with me. He was very, very chill, very, very nice, very cute. And we both loved him. We both really loved him. He even defended me from time to time when my mom would call me really bad names. But, she was still the same anyway. Like, she always kind of pretended to be a better person that she actually was when there were people around. However, with him, at some point she got a little comfortable and she called me slurs, like really bad slurs in front of him. Some stuff like a dirty word and stuff like that. Like, she really called me bad, bad stuff when I was 10 freaking years old. So, yeah, really good memories, right? Well, not really, because one night she called me names right before I went to bed. And that night I was woken up around like 3 a.m. because cops were here. And my mom was not here. I didn't understand at the start. I started panicking because, yeah, I was just 10 years old. And I learned that the guy she was dating had left during the night and died in a car accident. This pretty much changed everything. The atmosphere was already very bad at where I lived, but from that day, she became someone even worse. Because, yeah, she lost someone, and she didn't just lose him, she kind of lost herself too. Because she started spiraling into alcohol. Yeah, that's right. And, well, when she became very much alcoholic, I was the one who had to bear it for 5 entire years. And oh boy, I have a lot of story times. So let's start with a few story times that I have in mind, and some that really just straight up traumatized me, because of course it did. So the one I remember the most, one of the most traumatizing nights of my life, was when she and I were hanging out with one of her friends, a boyfriend. Well, not, they weren't dating, but there was this weird thing between them. I never really understood their relation. And she just, went to a bar. I was here, he was here, and I had school the next day. And she started drinking and drinking and drinking again and again. And at some point, she was just drunk. Of course she was. And at this point, it was around midnight when we finally decided to go back home. It was her friend who decided that it wasn't possible anymore, we had to leave. And the ride home was very bad. It was actually, she started trying to, jump out of the car. She started to cry and scream in the car. And it was really awful to watch, because it was my mom, and at this point I still hadn't realized that she was abusive or anything. So all I was seeing was my mom drunk, screaming and trying to kill herself in front of me. And boy, it was bad. It was really awful to watch. So one thing you might not know is that I have asthma, which meant that when she started doing that, I just straight up started panicking. Of course I did. And she didn't really care at all, because when I oh god, I remember this word so well. But when I told her that, Mom, I can't breathe, I just can't, because I couldn't, freaking asthma, she screamed at me in tears that I should just die if it was the case. So, yeah, pretty bad thing to say to your kid. Yeah, I cried a lot. When we arrived home, she started just trashing the place, just throwing everything around, screaming, and just, yeah, it very traumatizing moments. I forgot a lot about it because I kind of have amnesic dissociation, so yeah, I forget a lot of things. But yeah, that was an awful moment. Anyway, on to the next story time. Yay! So, what followed in the next months and years was that she dated a lot of other guys. She cheated on them a lot too, of course she did. And she was just plain awful. I had to do pretty much everything. Like, not everything in. She still did stuff, like she cooked, sometimes she cooked. She would clean the bathroom and stuff like this, but most of the things I was the one doing them because, well, she was staying in her bed all the time and not taking care of me or anything. So I had to just, clean everything, take care of the cats so they don't die. And in the meantime, she was always screaming at me, she was always insulting me, she was calling me worthless and crazy and stupid, that I wouldn't do anything in life correctly, that I was a burden, that I was nothing at all, that I didn't deserve a good life. And she did a lot of crazy stuff. She said a lot of crazy stuff that I still remember, of course. But then when I told her about it later, she would deny it like crazy and call me crazy for even saying that she said hurtful stuff. Like, she would deny it and guilt trip me and also gaslight me so hard. And sometimes I even did start to doubt it because she was insisting so hard that I was a liar, that I was a manipulator, even though she was the manipulator here. And oh my gosh, it's so frustrating to think back about it, but whew. There were a lot of things about her that were really bad, like I couldn't really show her my drawings because she didn't care at all. When I showed her my drawings, she was like, okay, cool. When I wanted to talk about my patients, she was like, I'm busy right now, Busy to her meant that she was just watching TV, not actually busy. I could never ask her to hug me because she would say, I don't like hugs. I could never really ask her anything. I couldn't hang out with friends, not really, not until very late, around when I was 14 to 15. I almost never saw my friends outside of school. She managed all my conversations. She read everything I told to my dad. I didn't have any privacy. At some point, she even put a freaking camera in the living room to record me when she was away because she didn't freaking trust me. How? Why? I didn't do anything, so I didn't have any privacy at all. She would always look into my bedroom for stuff to, just yell at me for, even though it was nothing bad at all. She would degrade me, humiliate me in front of people. She would lie and make me participate in her lies. Like, she would say that I was some piano prodigy, even though I wasn't. So I would lie with her and say, oh, yeah, yeah, I totally did that when I was a kid, even though I didn't. She's like, She made me a liar even though I didn't want to be, and I hated it, but I just didn't want to make her seem like a bad person, so I played into it even though I hated it. She wasn't really physically abusive, but there were a few times she did pretty degrading stuff I didn't really appreciate. Like one day she had a lot of piercings, which I respect, piercings are cool. But one day I was just, I was mopping the floor and she just dropped one of her piercings. It was a very small one, a little black ball, and I was wearing long white socks that were clean. And she forced me to crawl on the floor. She forced my legs on the wet and still not very clean floor to crawl around and look for it, because God forbid she does it herself. And like it hurt my knee, of course, but I don't know, there was something very humiliating about it, and I still remember it today. There were other times when I was a kid, she really used to punish me a lot for no reasons. Like we had little rats when I was very young. I was like 5 or 6. We had little rats, and she had one, I had one. I really loved them, but I was a kid. And one day I went for a weekend with my dad, like always. This is, yeah. And so I couldn't take care of the rats because I was away. I just couldn't take care of the cats, the rats, because I just wasn't here to do it. It's normal. And she is the adult here. She is the person who is supposed to be responsible. But when I came back, they were freaking dead. They were dead. They weren't here anymore. They were freaking dead. And she blamed me for it. She blamed me for the rats being dead. And she didn't just blame me, she punished me and forced me to kneel on the floor, on the wood, for like 3 hours. 3 freaking hours. I didn't have the right to look down, look up. I had to keep my head straight for the whole time. My knee were digging into the floor. It was awful. And when eventually her cat, Roxas, came towards me, and well, it was pretty reassuring, a cat is always a good comfort. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm allergic to cats, and she always kept getting more and more, so yay, that's great. But when he came toward me, I was it was comforting, so I just started kind of petting him, but not too much so she wouldn't get angry. But even then, she yelled at the cat and said that he didn't have the right to comfort me or anything because I did something bad. Like, this is crazy that this responsible adult blamed me for not being here, basically, to keep the rats alive, even though she was the adult. Like, I don't know, there's something crazy about it. But again, back to when I was, after the guy died and she became alcoholic and everything, she kept cheating on guys. I had to keep silence. She kept just being an absolute butthole to everyone, and it was frustrating to never be able to just tell someone, okay, dude, she's you're a good guy, but she's just cheating on you. I'm so sorry. But then, that's not even the worst thing she did. One of the worst things she did was that is baffling. Like, if you had someone who went through this, like really went through what she said she went through, you are going probably to get very mad at what I'm about to say. So basically, I think I was around 13 at this point. She started saying she had cancer. Yeah, cancer. Of course, everyone started to get worrying. Because, well, she was a bad person, but first, she was my mother. I didn't want my mother to die. And, well, a cancer is pretty worrying. So, yeah, she said she had one. She made my grandma always, bring her to the hospital. She forced my grandma to make her, quote-unquote, attend to meetings with doctors and all this stuff. And it lasted for, a year? 2 years? It lasted for a long time. And she never... she always said she had a cancer. She kept saying it to everyone. And, yeah, okay. I believed it. We all believed it. Of course we did. That's not something you would think someone would lie about, right? Well, after a while, she started not really going to meetings or anything, but she kept saying she had a fourth stage of cancer. So, I'm not even sure if that shit exists. I'm not even sure if fourth stage of cancer even exists. I think it is 3 stages. But even then, if there are 4 stages, then she should be in the hospital. I think we can all agree with that. But she said she had 4th stage cancer. Okay. I didn't believe that, but I didn't believe she was lying about the whole cancer either. Until one of her exes, when I was about to just really say bye forever to my mom, when we went to see one of her exes who was really nice, he told us something that was baffling to a point you cannot even begin to imagine. Not only had she lied about the cancer, but it was just an excuse to cover the fact that she was taking drugs, that she was taking freaking heroin. Drugs. She was taking drugs. When I was home. When I wasn't. When she was with her boyfriend. Well, her ex. And to explain that she was losing weight, she said that she had a freaking cancer. This girl, this woman, is nuts. She is crazy. I'm sorry, I hate this word because, madness doesn't even exist on the medical level, but she is simply crazy. She is a pathological liar. There is no way. How can you lie about something like this? Okay, so I have to calm down, but I think anyone who's been through, who has lived the death of a loved one because of cancer, or just anyone who's seen someone they love go through this, I think you must be pretty enraged, because there is no way. This is... Bro. So anyway, I never said I knew about it, but goddamn, I would have wanted to say it, but she would have just said, "No, you're crazy. Why would you think I'm lying about this? You're so crazy. I'm such a poor victim." I know she would have said that. I know she would have said something like that. She would have doubled down or whatever. And it is so annoying, because you can never blame her for anything. She never does anything wrong. You are always the one making up stuff with her. She even always lied about having a job, just so she could do I don't freaking know what. It is so irritating and frustrating to never be able to say anything. And even when I would try to just argue with her about small stuff, she would get mad at me and yell and call me names when I didn't even do anything at all. This is crazy. At some point, she even just got... So basically, her father died, which is very unfortunate because he was a good man, truly, and he probably never realized how bad his daughter was. But when she got his money, she started doing trips and all this stuff, which is a pretty good way to spend the money, I guess. But she started saying that she wanted to bring me with her in another country. Like hell, I'm going to follow her in another country. No. But when I said I didn't want to, she would say, "Oh, but you don't have a choice. You're a minor. I do what I want to do with you." She would even lie about my father not being my real father, which, okay, that means you cheated on him. And she would say, "No, I didn't. Are you crazy? You literally said it wasn't my father. So who is? That means you had to cheat on him since you were already together when you conceived me." This is nuts. This is nuts. And when she started getting in this, "No, your dad is not your dad, and anyway, you are mine, you are my property, I do what I want with you." First, this is not how children work, and second, she's so stupid. I'm so sorry. I don't like insulting people usually, but she is dumb. I have low-key never met a single person who is as stupid as she is, because she lies. But this is just something that baffles me, how much you can lie, and then when you then say what this actually means, like, that means if my dad isn't my dad and you were already dating him before conceiving me, then that means you cheated on him. And she just really realizes that, oh my freaking god, I am cooked. That means that she is going to think I'm a cheater, which is. And so she starts just saying, "No, you're crazy." No argument, no proven point, just "you are crazy. This is not true." When truthfully, this is the only logical explanation, so please tell me how this is not true. But anyway, maybe I'm just stupid. But more seriously, there are a lot of other stuff she did that I could talk about. Maybe you think this isn't abusive enough to be called abusive, but I can tell you, it was to a point that I just couldn't go downstairs without being terrified of if she would yell at me for some freaking reason. She was even too lazy to just get her ass out of the couch and go get a beer in the room next to her. She was too lazy to do this. She had to yell my name when I was upstairs so I could go downstairs and get her a beer, give it to her, and then go back upstairs. And then she wouldn't even throw the bottle in the trash herself. She would ask me to do it for her because it was too complicated for her, apparently. I don't know. And there are so many other stuff, like when I was 15 and around the time I was about to go live with my father, she would start threatening me of never seeing him again. Or she would even stop just cooking for me. Sometimes she would get up of bed around 3 p.m., which left me unsupervised until then, even if I always was unsupervised, even when she was perfectly awake. But this meant I had to go hit myself. Except there was one problem. So you see, I am perfectly able to just eat and prepare food and cook. Except I was just so terrified of eating anything she didn't want me to eat that I just would let myself starve and not eat anything, because the anxiety was just that bad around her. She was low-key horrifying, terrifying. I hated it. I hated it. I was hungry. I wanted to eat, but I was just so scared of her getting mad that I wouldn't. And sometimes, even when she was awake and downstairs, and it was around noon, 1 p.m., 2 p.m., she wouldn't call me to eat, and I would be too afraid to go downstairs and ask her if I wanted to eat, so I just didn't. And she let me not eat without a single thought. Not ever she asked me, "Oh, why didn't you eat? Why didn't you eat today?" No, she wouldn't care. I'm not even sure if she would notice, but if she did, she never told me about it, which kind of proves that she didn't give a fuck. But oh my, sometimes I just don't understand how people like this can have kids legally. It is baffling to me. Oh my lord. Anyway, now I live with my father, and even though we argue sometimes, because of course we do, it is so much better than whatever the fuck this was, because he actually cares about me, first, and second, he actually knows when to recognize his faults. So sometimes he will say pretty sensitive about, like, my trauma reactions, like the fact that I hate loud noises because of my mom. But no, sometimes he just says bad stuff accidentally, and when I tell him, he just apologizes. That is something my mom never did, not even once. So this is just, yeah, okay, you see what I mean. If you've been through this, you've had an abusive parent, and then you moved to the other parent's house and see what it is to have a real parent, what it is like. You probably know this feeling, how good it feels to finally feel like you matter. It is such a baffling feeling to realize that, oh my god, she was just that abusive. And if you are going through this, like right now, or if you've been through this, I just want to say that there is a way out. There definitely is a way out. It's not easy. It won't be easy. It definitely won't be easy. But there is a way out. There is always a better hand. There is always a better future. Even if it seems impossible to survive in this environment, even if you think you're going to end your life, which please don't. I swear that you matter somewhere. You matter to someone. You always do to someone, even if you aren't aware because you are suffering. You are important. So please, if you are going through this, talk about it to your school, talk about it to an adult, talk about it to maybe the rest of your family. I don't know, but please do not stay silent and suffer in silence, because doing this could have killed me. Low-key, I don't think I would have stayed alive if I'd stayed like one more year there. I wouldn't have. I was at my limit when I moved to my dad's place. So really, just try to find someone who listens to you. Even if you aren't able to leave, at least have someone to talk to, because it is very helpful, even if it is extremely scary and you think they aren't going to take you seriously. They will. And if they don't, they're freaking buttholes and they don't deserve you. So I know this is a very different video than most of the time. I'm a pretty art-related channel, but I just wanted to talk about this topic because it's been a big part of my life. I'm going to be 17 the 7th of August, and I just, this is a big part of my life, and it's gonna be 2 years since I live with my father, and I just wanted to talk about it, to share my experience, and also just maybe reassure the people who are going through this that you're not alone. It can get better, and it will get better, and I wish you all the luck in the world. Anyways, so Thank you so much for listening to my rambling and, just silly little me talking about very depressive topics. Maybe I will make a video later about mental health in general, because I've been through, well, depression, as you can imagine, and complex PTSD, and dissociation, all this stuff. Maybe I can and will make a video about it soon, because, well, psychology is a topic that really interests me anyway. But yep, this is it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I wish you a good day. Bye.